You're listening to WorkWire, sponsored by Career Club and SHRM. Career Club has a range of services aimed at job seekers with an empathetic approach. Whether you are a job seeker yourself, know someone who is in job search, or an HR professional looking to bring a more empathetic approach to transitioning employees, check out career.club. If you are an HR professional seeking to enhance your skills, subscribe to SHRM and explore their extensive resources. Visit shrm.org. That's shrm.org.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of The Workwire. I'm joined here by my good friend, CEO and President of SHRM, Johnny C. Taylor Jr. Johnny, how are you?
I'm doing really well, rested and relaxed after a nice vacation I've been sharing with you. So life is good. What about you?
I have been away for a little bit, too. I told you I was doing a workcation, but definitely found some time to step away. I think refreshing, recharging does me some good. I know it does.
That's right.
Awesome. It's so good to see you and welcome back.
Thank you. And I take that point of just refreshing and recharging and stepping away from work. I've done it. I encourage everyone listening to do it. Yeah. As tempting as it is not to get a break, you have to sometimes. You just can't, as someone told me years ago, you cannot sprint a marathon. And life's a marathon. Right?
Life is most definitely a marathon. Well, let's jump into our topic today. And it's a pretty heavy one. It's a meaty one for sure, which is around chief diversity officers.
Whoa.
So, yeah, it's a topic I'm sure is near and dear. What we have seen, and it's been pretty well published in the press, is that companies, were really pedal to the metal, right after George Floyd and Black Lives Matters, and big uptick in the presence and the recruiting of chief diversity officers. And a statistic I just read the other day said that recruiting is down 75%.
Yep.
I think SHRM has some very interesting data that would suggest 55% of companies have backed off, no investment in DEI stuff. Yep. So I want to just talk about, why is it that chief diversity officers just blew up, was a big deal, it's the most important job, and then just fell off a cliff? What's going on?
Gosh, so many things. And I want to talk with you about it because I'm sure you have some perspectives on it, given the work that you do every day. But, first of all, let me start with no surprise. No surprise to any of us who've been in and around corporate America and around who were around in 2020, June of 2020, when all of this, right after the horrific murder of George Floyd occurred. I think the real answer is it wasn't thoughtful growth in the beginning. Anything that has this sort of meteoric growth overnight, we've seen it with the internet bubble, we've seen everything that one day doesn't exist and the next day is on 1,000, right? Yeah. Not 100, but 1,000. Typically comes back to sort of whatever normal is. And we don't know what normal is. What we now know is, and I saw it, we were going around, every company was running out, well-intended, making these huge pronouncements. I'm going to hire this person. It wasn't a thoughtful, let's determine why we're going to hire them. It's more than George Floyd being killed, which is horrible. It is, how are we going to change the culture within our organization? How are we going to transform things? And as you and I know, transformation takes time. It doesn't happen overnight. It requires especially cultural transformation.
That's right.
And I think there was a naivete about it. It was very reactive. We have this situation that our country is grappling with right now, and we need to do something. So they ran out, made these announcements, and no surprise, not having taken a very thoughtful, methodical, and strategic approach, here we are with people who are disappointed, who are angry on both sides, by the way, people who are in underrepresented minority communities and majority communities because it wasn't done the right way. So here we are now. Everyone's a little unhappy about it. And the headlines are every day, they're reducing their investment in diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives. Eliminating the roles, combining them is just not a pretty situation right now.
To your first point, the seeds of it were sown on not great soil, right? And it was a program versus something that was grounded in principles.
That's right.
Right. And it took a very, as you said, tragic event to even jumpstart. I guess if there is some good news in it, that people are like, this is a problem.
Right.
Like, this is not cool. Like, that there are some things going on that need to be talked about, addressed, etc. But at the same time, and like I said, that, kind of from 0 to 1,000,
Right.
It's like, well, why were you a 0 before? First of all, like, what's up with that? And then secondly is, and again, you guys put out something that I thought was really, really useful on this topic around, wokeism, basically, and more things being brought under the umbrella of DEI that in some ways it's been diluted, by all different political agendas, social agendas, and it just becomes kind of a mess. And I wonder if that's part of the issue too. Is it's lost focus.
Well, no question. We tried to boil the ocean, right? And if you think about George Floyd, it was very much initially focused on one particular demographic, Black Americans. Yeah. And frankly, I've had this question in my mind. It went from Main Street to Wall Street. And I still haven't fully understood. George Floyd was not a situation where somehow we recorded a boss, a majority white guy attacking a Black man in the workplace. Now, one could argue that police officers were in their workplace at the time when it occurred, but in the traditional sense, all of a sudden, this hopped from Main Street, which was police brutality, and social injustice, et cetera, to Wall Street and in boardrooms and in corporate offices in the C-suite. And I don't think it translated particularly well. And again, I want to be clear with anyone listening. I'm not suggesting that this was not important. Your point's well taken. Why did we go from 0 to 1,000? So why were we at 0 in the beginning? One could argue maybe we weren't, but we made this huge jump based upon a societal sort of social injustice issue. And we jumped to corporate America, and corporate America wasn't prepared for it. Corporate America, we were still debating stakeholder versus shareholder. What's important? Do corporations exist to return value to their shareholders? Is that fundamentally why they exist? And therefore, all of this other stuff is noise, whether it's diversity or not. So we jumped into the situation, and I think it was admirable. The country was we have to think back to where we were. March 2020, the world shut down because of the pandemic. So we were all fearful. We all had a lot of free time. You and I were just talking about it. When I used to be on airplanes and going to meetings, et cetera, I'm sitting at home wondering if I or someone I know is going to die from this disease that none of us can explain. And so you're engaged in introspection. And then all of a sudden, you're in the front of this television watching the number of COVID-related deaths spike. And then you see a police officer standing over or kneeling on someone's neck for 8 minutes. Well, that's combustible. I mean, no surprise that we all corporate leaders felt a need to do something. I would just say, as I said back then, they needed to pause, take it in, develop a strategy, just as we would any other issue that business tries to tackle. Instead, we began reacting, issuing statements, taking positions, releasing money, and here we are.
Yeah. So I guess for me, a lot of this in whether it was 0 or something more than 0, but certainly less than 1,000. Why the need to put the focus on an individual CDO, the Chief Diversity Officer, the need to, like you said, be very public and in front about something that in theory should be a core value. What should have always been, and maybe to your point, maybe it always was a core value, but now it's like, well, we need the nice police, we need the accepting police. It's like, well, weren't we always like this? Like, is this something that had to be mandated?
So, Bob, right? I mean, I saw that. I shuddered at the time when I saw some of these reactions, is the way I'm going to call it, to the George Floyd situation, and it's because we were busy virtue signaling. Yes. People hate that phrase, but that's literally what was happening as we were trying to signal how virtuous we were and how woke we were and how sensitive and empathetic and sympathetic and all. And so that was the problem. It wasn't always born from a good place. It was, we need to do this. We think it's important to do it, perhaps out of guilt because of corporate goodwill, citizenry. I don't know. But it didn't come across ultimately particularly sincerely. And people have figured that out. And I'm very cautious about, judging people's motivations and how sincerely they hold any belief, right? But I will tell you this, that when someone makes a statement that, for example, and I won't name the company in particular, but the CEO said a third of our new hires are going to be Black going forward. What? Like, you have no basis for saying that. I'm a Black guy. I appreciate your commitment to diversity, but there is no way in God's green earth you can make that just off the top of your head. You can say whatever you want, but what you're going to do is you've now boxed yourself into a corner. You didn't discuss it with the HR professionals who would have told you, well, we don't exactly have an available labor pool in this particular job set or at this particular location. Mm-hmm. Like, we need to be thoughtful and strategic about this. So I think it was just a point in time when corporate America felt it needed to signal these virtues, and it has backfired and is continuing to do it. We have a series of backlash incidences from both sides, the majority community, the underrepresented minority community. Everyone's unhappy now because of these decisions.
Well, I guess if we can agree that, like, how we started on this road may not have been the greatest way to start, even to your point, well-intentioned and people wanting to do the right thing as they understand the right thing to do. Right. Here we are 3 years later, and it's just fizzled. And that I'm, I guess, maybe a little surprised, Johnny, that it hasn't. Okay, maybe it got off to something less than a great start for whatever reasons, but the idea of people feeling included, being just sensitized to not everybody sees the world the way that you see it, that there's a lot of benefits to be gleaned from being more open-minded, kind of taking off some blinders of what, the way to do something is, actually having taken the time to hear other voices. So even if it was sown in something less than ideal conditions, it was still sown. That's right. And some of these messages did get into organizations. Yes. And for me, you want to talk about virtue signaling, it feels like whatever the complete opposite of virtue signaling is, to say, I'm out. Hey, remember all that investing we're doing? Didn't really mean it. It's actually not important to me. And I'm pulling the plug because, to your earlier point, now I got to make Wall Street happy. My costs because of inflation are higher, whatever else is going on in my business. So yeah, that was nice. Didn't completely mean it. And now I'm going back to what I really believe.
So I'm going to throw a little contrarian position. I've been talking with CEOs about this very topic, and they feel comfortable calling me about it. And obviously I wear the HR hat, but I'm a CEO. I hire people. I have a pretty big team, global team. And what I'm hearing is not so much, we're not going to do this, we've abandoned it. They've said, press the pause button and let's rethink it. And that gives me hope, Bob, that this is not some ground shattering, like we're going to stop doing this. Many of them are saying, if this were an initiative within our organization, a marketing campaign, a this or that, whatever, that wasn't quite going well, a rollout of something, we would pause. That didn't mean necessarily that we're abandoning it. It's we're going to have a reset moment. Pardon me, I couldn't help it. Right? But it really was, let's pause. So I am more hopeful than most that we're just in a moment right now where everyone stood back and said, 3 years back, let's do a postmortem. Let's look at what went right, what went wrong. In the interim, we've had a U.S. Supreme Court decision rolled down on affirmative action, which says whatever we thought many of us could do 3 years ago, we may have been wrong. Or maybe there's going to be a different way we have to achieve it, or otherwise we're going to be dragged through the courts. That's not necessarily an abandonment of the commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion. It says, let's reset right now. So many of the organizations I'm talking with are saying, yeah, and we realized the person we hired 3 years ago in a rush wasn't the right person. It wasn't the right strategist. The person didn't understand, HR and human dynamics. We didn't understand that people resist change. And just because you as the CEO announce we're going to be more diverse, that people are going to join you any more than just as you and the CEO who says you're going to come back to work, by the way, that people are just going to say, okay, the CEO said it, so here I come. It doesn't work that way. So they're trying to retool, develop a new strategy, find the right person, determine what are the most effective ways to invest in diversity. And I'm hearing that a lot more than I'm hearing people say, to hell with it, it didn't work, that's a bad idea. That gives me hope.
Yeah, so if I could contrarian you back for just a second,
Please.
Because you and I are, hugely optimistic people, so I think we share that trait. But the data on the recruiting piece of it, so maybe we hired in a rush, maybe we didn't have the exact right person. Okay, that's fine, but that would seem to indicate that those positions would be, the executive search world would be looking for more of them.
They may be, Bob, but you got to pause and say, before we go back out and repeat the same mistake, let's stop and say, what are the right qualities, characteristics, experiences in a candidate to be successful? Like, we've learned that hiring this sort of person to lead diversity in this organization does not work. So let's think about it. What do we need to do this? Does it always have to be a Black person? Does it have to be a Hispanic? Could it be a white woman? Could it be a gay male? We don't know, but we've got to now pause, and we have the luxury now of pausing for a minute. Again, I hope I'm right, and I hope the contrarian you use wrong, but all of the headlines have been sensationalized. I think I sit on corporate boards. I'm in the room. I have not heard people say this diversity stuff is just a waste of time. A few people say these things, but I think the spirit of the conversations is very much about, it's an investment. Like every other investment, we must get a return on that investment. And so we don't mind spending $10 million on something, but we had better get $10 million or more worth of value. And the only way you do that is you put together a business plan. You have a strategy. You operationalize that strategy. All of the things that you and I know are the way corporate America works. So I'm more encouraged, and perhaps I'll be right here on the work wire a year from now, 2 years from now, all wrong. My instinct is it's not. And let me say this, because everyone realizes, like it or not, America is browning and graying at once. So if you're a CEO who says, I don't care about diversity, you're naive. You're worse than naive. You're not good for shareholders, because your consumers of the future, your employees of the future will be diverse. We know this. America's K through 12 systems are majority minority. So this notion that this is not your issue and you're going to bury your head in the sand or just be pissed off about it is not going to solve anything. And boards understand that. So they're saying, listen, fine for you to reset, to stop, pause for a minute, but you got to get back in the game, because these are our future workers and our future customers.
Do you think that the diversity officer will continue to be a standalone role, or will this be integrated?
So, wow, you really want to touch something. I never thought it should have been a standalone role. I think while diversity initiatives are not just HR driven, they are largely HR driven. They are internal cultural issues. Sure, there's supplier diversity and there's community relations and all of that, but at its core, your employees are saying, I want a diverse and an inclusive and an equitable environment in which to work. I want to know that I have opportunities. So it's largely an HR function. And it's funny that you mentioned that, Bob. I've been seeing more and more chief HR officers add diversity, culture, what have you, to their titles, because we've now said, instead of, hiring someone who's now a direct report to a CEO, and I can tell you as a CEO, I have a hard time talking to direct reports I have now. So adding another person, I don't have enough time in the day. So giving it to the individual or the role within your organization that is best equipped to drive a strategy is the way to do it. So I've never been a huge fan in the CDO being a separate role. I thought it should be a part of the HR function, just like comp and benefits. We need to make sure people are paid equitably, just like talent acquisition. We have to make sure we hire diversity, leadership development, like all of these things, I think largely are within the purview of HR.
I want to go back to a point that you were making.
Say that because you're from SHRM and you represent the HR function. But if you just stop and step back, I think there's a lot to be said for that.
No, I would really, really agree. And I think that the more things get siloed out, people have different agendas, and it's just the way the world works, and that's politics and everything. And when it's more integrated into the business strategy, and it's HR's already proven, particularly coming out of the pandemic, as being already that strategic business partner, and partner even sounds like they're not part of, but strategic in the business.
That's right.
This is a component of that, rather than this completely off on another continent kind of an issue.
But not exclusively. I just do want to say that not exclusively is it all HR, because I do acknowledge, for those who are listening and say he doesn't get it, yeah, your job is bigger than HR, but most of an organization's commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion is internal and human resources related.
Yeah, I want to go back to the point that you're making around kind of the pause and reevaluating, and what's the return that I'm getting on this. In your mind, are those the same KPIs that they're using to run the business generally, or are there separate KPIs?
There's a lot of overlap, but there's some that are very, very, I think, distinctive too. So in the business, we don't actually, well, maybe we do. So you go do an NPS, for example, Net Promoter Score, to determine how engaged, how committed your customers are, loyal to you, et cetera. Well, you can do the equivalent of that. There is a metric, maybe it's NPS, maybe it's employee surveys and satisfaction and engagement scores, whatever it is, the concepts are the same, that we can determine whether or not our internal customer is satisfied, engaged, likely to leave me, or what's the lifetime value, in other words, the retention. So there's very much some parallel between the ways that we do all of our business. And I think that's the big deal. We need to figure out, we know when we have turnover in a particular area, just as if a customer leaves you, you want to go figure out why. What am I doing to not retain that customer? Well, the same question is, what do you do when you lose an underrepresented person from your staff who's a key person that you wanted and they wanted you thought? So yes, very much. Short answer is you just apply the same principles that we've always applied in the rest of our business functions. Nuanced differences, of course, but generally speaking, yep.
Yeah, I was doing an interview with John Ferguson, who I think you know,
Yes.
the CHRO of NASCAR.
NASCAR, yes,
Super
sir.
good guy. I love John.
Great.
And, we were talking about one of his, isms is sometimes you have to go to grow.
Yes.
Okay, that's a fair point. And this, I guess, broadly be around retention and why you're leaving. And sometimes you have to go to grow. And I think he made the point really well. But if there's a pattern of why people are going to grow somewhere else,
That's right.
is that something that we should be looking at to develop as a growth, either resource, asset, path for people? Because they're sending us a message pretty clearly that they're not getting everything that they need here, and that they're looking to move on.
And
So
that's John. That's the point, Bob. We may not be that organization. Years ago, I was at Viacom, and we owned MTV Networks. We literally, every 3 years, people were going to come in, get their experience, and move on from MTV. That's what it was. Now, obviously, you wanted to know, is this disproportionately negatively impacting women or Black people or Hispanic? Got it. But at the end of the day, our entire business strategy was we're going to remain fresh at all times. People won't be here for 30 years. Got it. It could be that is your business strategy, but it's back to your point. You just apply the same principles.
Right.
That you do in any of the other business functions. Diversity is a business imperative. Let's be clear. So if it's a business imperative, then why not manage it the same way you do any other business imperative? That really is the point of it. And somehow we decided that it was going to be something different. And I think that's because many of those diversity initiatives were born out of social activism and social justice. And that there's nothing wrong with it, except that doesn't translate to business necessarily. Business is we've got to get a return on our investment. Somehow we can be the most perfectly diverse, inclusive, equitable business that fails.
Yes.
And what do you have then?
Yeah. So for me, I mean, if we can maybe start putting a little bit of a bow on this, it seems like that between a company, their values are genuinely grounded in these issues, and it's not a kind of program du jour, shiny object that's in the news cycle this minute, and we need to react to it. So what does the company genuinely believe?
Right.
And then two is your well-made point. How do you already run your business?
Right.
Like it's the same thing. This isn't a new business line that we've launched called diversity that's got its own KPIs.
Yep.
This is the business. How are we showing that our business is healthier or successful, whatever the right measures are, as we start to develop these qualities and live out our values? If diversity, equity, inclusion is part of that, which hopefully it is, then that should be translating itself into the business. It shouldn't be this completely different rubric that's got nothing to do with we make widgets.
That's right. And if you don't get that, you're a bad person, you're a bigot, you're this, you're that. We really do have to, I will say this as you talk about the bow on it, we've got to get to the point. What we've learned is shaming and blaming people is not necessarily the best strategy either for inculcating, if I get that word right, into your culture, an embracing and a commitment to diversity. Short term, it worked. I can blame you. You can blame me. We can blame someone. That we know, as I'm speaking to organizations that have paused, have said, you know what, the way we went about this was all wrong. What we have ended up with is, yes, we're more diverse, but we're also more divided. And I'm not sure that's what we thought we were going to get. And so a friend of mine has a tagline that says, we have to have diversity without division. And I think there's something to be said. So all of these discussions are now being had within boardrooms and in C-suites all over the country right now. Funny thing is, I was in Paris a couple of weeks back, and they had a very similar George Floyd-like incident. And I was meeting with the CHRO of the company and her building. It literally occurred right outside of her building.
Oh my gosh.
Literally. And she was describing, it was like, oh God, I'm playing this all over again. 2020 in America is now in Paris. And she said, are there some learnings? Can you actually help us not make some of the mistakes that you all made in America? And I said, gosh. And so we spent a lot of time talking about, yes, this is a clarion call. This is a moment, but how you respond to it, you could have responded to it better than our leaders did in many instances. Well intended, but it's important to learn from what didn't work the last time if we want this to be sustainable.
Yep. Okay, cool. Johnny, as always, I love kicking these issues around with you. This is a big one, and one that I know that we will come back to time and again on the Work Wire. But for now, it's great seeing you. Thank you so much. And thank you, everyone, for listening. Any parting comments from you, Johnny?
No, let's just go do it. Our goal is diversity without division.
I love it. Awesome. All right. Thanks, everyone, for listening.
Check out career.club for personalized help with your job search. Visit shrm.org to become part of the largest human resources organization worldwide.